So welcome everybody. This is the SharePoint Framework and JavaScript special interest group. So this is the bi-weekly sync call, which we're having bi-weekly on Thursdays at 7 a.m. Pacific time. And it's always debatable. Pacific people don't quite like this timing. On the other hand, it's just before they actually leave the work. So for some people, they're saying that this is actually a great time if they're in Pacific time zone. The reason for the 7 a.m., by the way, is the fact that we are more aligned on Europe and then also eastern coast of US. So people can attend more freely on these calls. Now, let's get ongoing on the call as itself. Quickly, just explaining what this call is all about. It is a repeating slide in every single call, but just making sure because there's always some new attendees in the call. Just out of curiosity, are there new people attending this call? Is there somebody in the call who has not been here before? Just checking the window. No mention. Everybody knows what we're talking about. Anyway, so this is bi-weekly community call. Excellent. There's somebody, new people always joining. Bi-weekly community call. Everybody can join. Everybody can have a discussion in that window. We will go through the latest on the SharePoint framework from the engineering perspective. Then we'll go through different open source initiatives which we're running under the SharePoint engineering. And then we'll have always community calls and Q&A in the end. Quite often we do, however, run out of time for the Q&A, and that's why the IM window, the chat window, is super important also during the call. So you're able to ask questions and have a discussion in there for the other people in the call who can answer on those questions. And yes, David, bunny is in the slide as well. You spot the bunny. There's two URLs on the slide as well. So AKMS SP Dev community is the Microsoft Tech community location where you can have a discussion with the other people in the community, and SP Dev docs. I'll come back on the SP Dev docs in a second as well. But let's actually get on going. So today, like mentioned, we'll do a quick update on the engineering side of SharePoint framework. So nothing too major because we had the call 2 weeks before. That was 20th of December. So not that much actually has happened in the engineering side since last 2 weeks, which is completely understandable. Then we'll have a look on the open source projects run by the PnP initiative, and there has not been humongous amount of progress in those either because it is a holiday season. But let's go through what has happened and mention those where those things have not been happening that much. And then we should have time, well, we will have definitely time for Kyle and Michal for the community demos, and we should have time for the Q&A section as well. And thank you, David, for the notice. I did initial adjustments on the colors, so we're getting more aligned on the the new teal color of the SharePoint. So let's see. Feel free to give us any feedback around the colors on the IM window as well. But obviously, it's a design people who've decided that the new SharePoint color is teal. It's no longer blue, so we need to align on the teal color sooner or later. Now. Going on, moving forward. So quickly, just opportunities to participate on the community itself. Obviously, you can always volunteer to do a demo in the SPFx call, in this call, something related on SharePoint Framework extensions, SharePoint Framework web parts, or JavaScript development in general in SharePoint context. You can demo PnP JS usage in any application or solution. You can contribute in GitHub, and that's one way of getting your samples and your contributions more visible for the people. You can contribute inside of the SharePoint or the PnP organization, and we'll acknowledge you in our official communications as well. You can absolutely contribute by sharing your own samples in your own GitHub as well. But the reason why we're kind of collecting them under one repo or a few repos is that people can more easily find the latest and greatest and the community contributions as well. So it's kind of up to you if you want to share those contributions in the SharePoint or the PnP organization, or do you want to keep them by yourself? Typically, more people can find the sample if you share that with PnP or SharePoint repository. And please remember to mute yourself when you're joining on these calls. Thank you. And there's one person. There we go. And then the final thing, obviously, is give us feedback. Give us feedback. Something is not working, we need to know about it. There are obviously issues. This is SharePoint is a software as service, so there are always bugs when you're writing a software, so we need to know about those issues, or issues related on open source, or gaps or in the functionality in SharePoint. Those are really important us to know, so we're able to address them as part of the Microsoft. Now, one thing what I wanted to actually add here quickly, just a reminder, it is And we're starting again a new year, so welcome to the 2019. So let's try to make the 2019 the year of being nice in open source. This is just something which I wrote on the slides as well. Just a reminder that a lot of the people who are contributing in these open source initiatives, in the open source reusable controls and components, are actually doing that on their own time. So they're spending evenings and weekends on helping other people in the community. So being nice on the GitHub, being nice on the issue list and the issue reporting is super important. So people will actually help you on your issues and getting a lot of and you will get much more. I can guarantee that you get a much more better service if you're being nice when you're reporting something rather than being angry. We understand that there might be bugs, and those bugs might be absolutely frustrating. They might be super painful, and you might run into an issue in a customer engagement, but it's still, we need to remember that the reason why you run into those issues is that you're using something which other people have built together with other people in community. So the option would be that you would be building everything by yourself, and most likely that's not an optimal situation. So try to be nice. Sharing is caring, and let's continue and let's make the 2019 a year of being nice in open source. That's my initiative this year, if nothing else. Cool. Now, just a quick updates on the SharePoint Framework side. So from a SharePoint engineering side, I did not, by the way, introduce myself for those who are not aware who I am. Just quickly explaining. So I'm the person, Vesa Juvonen, I'm the senior program manager running the community, SharePoint developer community, and all of the SharePoint developer guidance. And I'm also inside in the team who's responsible for delivering SharePoint Framework. But first of all, before we go to the roadmap and any updates, just thank you everybody for your contributions in 2018. We actually had a massive growth all around the SharePoint developer usage actually in both classic and in the modern experiences, because SharePoint Framework usage was growing in both sides. Nowadays, actually, SharePoint Framework is more widely used in the modern experiences, but it took a while to people to adapt to modern experiences in SharePoint Online as well and start using customizations on that side as well. Now, in the documentation, we had more than 1 million monthly views. We actually crossed 1.5 million monthly views in December for the SharePoint Dev docs, which is a new record, all-time record. It might be, though, related on the migration of the MSDN documentation, but we're following up on those metrics as we move along on the following months. We had 186 contributors, so people like you in this call, making sure that our documentation is active and, sorry, not active, well, active as well, but it's correct. So if there was any typos, issues, or things to improve in the documentation, people actually submitted those suggestions using GitHub, and that was really, really powerful. We had more than 2 million watch time minutes in YouTube, which is great. We can't unfortunately sell ads in there, which is a pity, but I don't know where we would actually spend that money. Maybe in Slack would be nice. We had more than 33,000 unique views, so if you divide 2 million by 33,000 unique views, you can see how many minutes people by average watch a individual video. And we had more than 932 contributors with more than 27,000 contributions in GitHub. That includes actually PnP organization and also the Office UI Fabric React section in the Office Dev side. But it's a massive amount of people being active in here. And we have more than 52,000 unique tenants using the open source components. So components like PnP JS or PnP PowerShell or PnP CSM extension in SharePoint Online. Now, I do not have any exact Twitter stats, so I didn't collect those for the quick summary, which I did on the last day of last year. But thank you everybody for your contributions. Thank you everybody for being part of this. Your feedback, your input actually significantly matters. It is actually driving the design of SharePoint Online. So that's why it's super, super important that you're being active and giving us feedback. Now, a few URLs which we're always keeping up to date in here. AKMS SP Dev Docs. MSDN has been now shut down. So if you're looking into going server-side API documentation in MSDN, you are being redirected to the docs.microsoft.com site. The documentation is exactly the same still, but it's no longer hosted in MSDN. We're looking into making sure that starting from relatively soon, we're looking into doing a separate CSM documentation, for example, for SharePoint 2013, 2016, SharePoint Online, 2019 as well, and releasing also server-side documentation for 2013, 2016, 2019, so that everything will be actually available in the documentation. That's something which is coming up later this year. Now, the second big thing, which we are adjusting all the time, is the issues. If you're running any issues on SharePoint development, on-premises, cloud, any topic, basically, please let us know. Go to the AKMS SP Dev issues list and then report the issue in here. We're adjusting that slightly as we are moving along during this year. There has been now an automated bot added on here, which is helping us on tracking what is actually happening, and you will see some bot responses on your issues, so just letting you know that there are some automation behind of the issue list nowadays. Now, other stuff, SharePoint Framework, obviously usage has been growing, like mentioned, quite heavily. This is statistics since yesterday, so yesterday's number is included in here. You can see a pretty significant drop, obviously, during holiday season this year or last year, 2018 holiday season, but we can already see that starting from yesterday, we'll get back on track on the growth curve when people are coming back to work and starting using SharePoint Framework. But it's a massive growth since the 1st of January 2018 until the end of January. End of 2018, we grew 581% in the usage, and it is an insane number, considering the fact that SharePoint Framework was already more widely used than SharePoint add-ins at the 1st of January 2018. And from that moment, we grew still 581%. So that gives you an indication that SharePoint Framework is absolutely the model where we want to actually, where you want to invest in the future as well, because others are doing that as well. And the usage is growing all the time. Now, a few updates, no actual updates on the roadmap since last week or 2 weeks ago, but just quickly going through and explaining this, and please remember to join immediately on the call. Thank you. So the 1.8 version will come out on the first quarter of this year. It is most likely coming on the, how would I say, first half of the first quarter. That is right now the objective. If there are any delays on that, well, there always might be some delays on that, because we want to make sure that we are releasing the GA version of the Microsoft Teams development support for SharePoint Framework. And that means that if there are any adjustments, sorry, Patrick, I'm going to mute you. Haha. So if there's any adjustments and we need to delay the release slightly, that might happen, and that's the reason why I don't want to actually give you an exact date or target date right now, but we're looking into making that happen on the first half on the first quarter, and that will give you some sort of a hint where we're looking into making this happen. Now, it might be delayed slightly, like mentioned, but here we go. Now, other topics bubbling under, the store and App Store story for SharePoint Framework is under development. I've recently, today, actually was checking some presentations and plans related on that one, so that is progressing. SharePoint Framework library package support for third party most likely will be delayed until 1.9, but it's coming as well. It's one of the high requested capabilities in SPFx, and we're looking into also using the SharePoint Framework then in other areas as well. So Microsoft Teams support will come to GA as part of 1.8, but then there's additional capabilities, additional Office 365 platforms, which will start supporting SharePoint Framework in the future. So super cool future from that perspective. Now, this is an interesting topic, so I wasn't sure if I want to actually show you this, but I wanted to actually be fully transparent and open on what I'll be planning to do. Now, before we go to the open source areas, Patrick will take the lead on that point. We're looking into actually coming up with a mascot for SharePoint development. And somebody might be considering, why are you wasting time on this? Because why don't you fix those bugs? Well, yes, we're fixing the bugs as well, and spending time on this one is not spending time on taking time away from fixing the bugs. But what we want to do with this one is that because we don't have a logo for SharePoint Framework, and for whatever reasons our marketing don't want to do that, we want to introduce a SharePoint Dev mascot. In the same way as Azure has an open source mascot, Brady, we want to introduce a person who's the mascot for SharePoint development. And right now this is the latest, let's say, suggestion on the mascot. So it would be a Porsupine. I don't know how to even pronounce that. So on the right side, you're wearing the green shirt. And then we would actually release a few different adaptations of this one, a few different colors. Most likely the main color would be teal. So it's aligned with a SharePoint look and feel. So it's kind of curious on the porcupine. Porcupine, yes, that's how you pronounce it. Thank you very much. And the basic idea and the question might be, why do you want to have this? Well, because we can have a logo. We want to have something which we can relate to, and then we can do shirts and stickers and all of that on something which people can relate to and be part of as a, let's say, community as well. And that's really the idea of this one. Okay, at least it's causing a lot of feedback on the iron window. That's always good. And on Patrick's comment, I have to say that the possum was one of the suggestions, but then my manager actually said that, well, possums, at least in the US, are considered not that clean animals, so we should not actually use possum as the PnP or the SharePoint Dev logo. But a lot of feedback on the iron window, and that's good to see. Good. Okay, cool. So nothing super major related on, oh my god, no, never, let's not make that happen. But this is almost like, this is mainly for fun and mainly for smiles, so people can actually have fun as part of the work what they do as well. So because everything should not be too serious. Now let's get back on the track on the other areas. Patrick, will you do the honors, or will you take it away, or how do we do this?
Yeah, I can do that.
Excellent.
Hi, everybody. Sorry for being late, but sometimes things go longer than you think they're going to go. So a quick update on the PnP JS client-side libraries. We've got the 1.2.8 release coming January 11th. I know that's got a couple fixes in there from the past couple of weeks, as well as we'll probably, now that we're back at work, try and get a few things off the issues list into that release as well. Of course, if you have ideas or want to do contributions, pull requests of your own, January 11th, and you want them in the next release, that'd be by January 11th, so do get those in. Absolutely, of course, encourage and welcome those. We are continuing to do the beta releases. I didn't do one over the holidays because I wasn't working, but that gives you a chance. Generally, once we merge in a bunch of pull requests, we'll do a beta release, so that gives you a chance to test that stuff out. Or if you happen to be blocked by a particular bug that won't be out till the next monthly release, you can always try out a beta release to see if that works for you in terms of letting you continue your work. Always a nice strategy there. I want to remind folks we are starting to think about 2.0, what that might mean, breaking changes we might make, etc. So I've added a roadmap label to the issues and the issues list. Absolutely encouraging your feedback there. We're going to keep adding to that list as we go. And if you have ideas that might fit in for a 2.0 release, something that might be a breaking change, but you think would be a good addition to the library, so please submit an issue, mention it's an idea for a roadmap thing, and we'd love to discuss it. Can't promise we'll be able to do necessarily every idea, but absolutely want to hear your ideas and encourage you to please submit those ideas or give us feedback on any existing ideas. We do not have a target date for that 2.0 release, sometime in 2019, so in the next 12 months, but not super soon. That's something we're still thinking about, and a big breaking change release like that is always a lot of extra work. So that's going to wait just a little bit. But as always, I want to say thank you to everybody that has contributed in the last month or the last couple weeks since we last talked. Continuing to see new folks show up and contribute, and folks that have been around for a while contribute even more. So that's fantastic to see. Really appreciate that. So thank you to all of you out there in the community who are helping us out with your contributions, whether those be issues or pull requests. Both are super valuable. So thank you very much. I did want to make one small mention on issues. I've had a couple people submit issues and then had several people show up and comment like, oh man, I've had this issue forever too. If you're having an issue, please let us know. You all, in a way, test the library in more ways that we could ever come up with in the work you're doing. So it's very probable you would run into scenarios we either haven't thought of, haven't been able to test, or whatever. So if you do have an issue, please let us know. Don't sit there frustrated that something's broken. Just let us know. We'll do our best to get it fixed. Link down there at the bottom, pnp.github.io/pnpjs. It's all the documentation for the PnP JS JavaScript libraries. Hashtag PnP JS on Twitter. And then as well, you can follow me at Mediocre Bowler on Twitter, and it would get you updates on the PnP JS library as they come out. Pardon me. Office 365 CLI updates. New version 1.12 is now out with the following capabilities added: moving folders to another location, adding texts to modern pages, support for site collection app catalog, and then cross-platform PnP starter kit setup script is now out. That's been in progress for a long time and is now out. So that's very exciting for folks that want to work with the starter kit but are maybe not able to use PowerShell for whatever reason. So you now have a nice cross-platform way to do that, which is very impressive work. I know Waldeck worked on that. I know many others as well from the community worked on that. So I wanted to say thank you to everybody for that. So that's a great achievement to get that out. In progress for the 1.13 release, support for certificate-based auth, which is going to be cool, and that's done, so I can steal it for PnP JS. Moving files around, listing teams messages, support for specifying locale when creating site collections, and then more commands. As always, if you have ideas like, excuse me, I'm back to having a horrible cold, so I apologize. As always, across not just the CLI, but all the libraries, if you have ideas, please do let us know. Submit them either as issues or submit them as pull requests. We'd love to see them. So thank you again to everybody that's helped out with the CLI. To install the latest version, npm install -g at pnp/office365-CLI. You can see all the documentation at that aka.ms0365 CLI link, and you can follow the Office 365 CLI hashtag on Twitter, and as well there is a Gitter channel where you can ask questions and interact with other folks who are using the CLI. So great work on the latest CLI updates. Really excited, especially to see that starter kit setup script get out there into the wild. That's been a great work by a lot of folks in the community. So congratulations on that. 1 second. Apologies. I just had to make some awful noises, so I muted my microphone. Reusable SPFx controls. No big updates since the last call, but we do have some open source controls around both property controls and then content controls. So property controls can be used within the property pane. So when you go to edit your client-side web part, you get the property pane over there on the right. So these are controls specifically designed to work within that property pane and allow you to choose various things. So there's color picker, taxonomy picker, people picker, I think, and a few others. Definitely check those out. And then the content controls are designed to be used within the body of your web part. So things like showing maps, showing charts, working on constant improvements to those existing controls. And again, this is a place the community has really helped out and done a lot of great work. And as well, if you have ideas for other controls or enhancing existing controls, please either submit a pull request, of course, or let us know with an issue. Great thing to do. But the controls, if you haven't had a look at these, are really fantastic. There's 2 links down there at the bottom for more information on each of the libraries. But they can really save you a lot of time and give you a nice out-of-the-box look, as they are styled using the Office UI fabric. So they'll really blend in very nicely to your existing SharePoint projects and the existing sort of SharePoint UI as folks are using the web parts and application customizers you are creating. So take a look at those if you haven't. Certainly save you some time and certainly add a little bit of easy flair to your applications without a whole lot of custom work on your part. Moving on to the SPFx Community Yeoman Generator. So for folks that might not be familiar with this, this is a Yeoman generator built on top of the out-of-the-box Microsoft generator, but this is a community-supported generator. And it sort of adds to and enhances the existing out-of-the-box generator, and by which I mean you're going to get all of the same out-of-the-box files as if you did Yo at Microsoft, but during the setup experience, you're going to have a few extra options you get to choose from. You can choose from different frameworks, so not just React and Knockout or the default no framework SPFx choice, but you also have choices such as handlebars, and then Angular Elements has been extremely popular. I think that's almost even with the React usage through this generator. So very cool. No updates on capabilities since the last call, but always like to remind folks this is out there, and it's a great way. So if you're looking to use Vue or handlebars or Angular Elements, some of these things that aren't right now supported by the Microsoft template, or as well, it has a few other setup capabilities to help you out. Do check this out. Great capability, great enhancement. And again, you will get an out-of-the-box SPFx project under the hood, but with a few things added on top of it, such as Angular Elements, Vue.js, PnP JS can be automatically added to your project, things like this. So it can be super helpful. Got some great stuff around Jest, StyleLint, a Webpack bundle analyzer, all in the works. So to install this, npm install -g, and we have fixed this slide now so that it is correct at pnp/generator-spfx. And so again, this is a community-supported version that builds on top of the out-of-the-box Microsoft generator. So definitely worth checking out if you have any interest in using Angular Elements, Vue, handlebars, things like that. Really a nice enhancement to what's out there. And, of course, some accepting pull requests and issues like all the other PnP projects. So if you have ideas to enhance the generator, want to work on that, that's absolutely welcome and encouraged, of course, along with everything else we are doing. Moving on now to the demos. So our first demo is going to be Kyle Schaeffer with a data dashboard. That's how I'm going to start saying it now. Dashboard web part that he has put together and is going to demo. Kyle, are you on the call? Looks like you are. You ready to go?
Yep. We tested the audio. We tested the audio before you arrived, so it should be fine.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad things didn't completely fall apart in my absence.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's try the screen sharing of my dashboard web part.
Dashboard. It's not my fault if everybody else says it wrong.
Okay. Cool. Well, thank you guys. Really appreciate that. Hopefully you guys can see the screen.
Not yet.
Looking good.
Give me 1 second.
Still loading. Give it one more second.
People are still going on the mascot. This is an endless discussion. Okay, here we go.
Definitely rabbit hole the call.
Exactly. Sorry for that. So here we go.
Okay.
We can see it.
Cool. Well, thank you guys so much. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys about this web part that we built. And if you haven't heard me talk before, my name's Kyle Schaeffer. I work at a company called Spiritus. We do enterprise apps for a bunch of companies all over the place, mostly in Office 365 and specifically in SharePoint. So we're using a lot of the stuff that Patrick just mentioned, a lot of the open source libraries, including SharePoint Framework. And one of the things that we did in November was we launched a class for it's just called Introduction to SharePoint Framework. So it's just basically teaching folks how to build web parts and extensions in SharePoint Framework. So It's kind of designed for anybody who's either a total beginner at SharePoint and Office 365 up to people that have been doing it and know how to do it. They just kind of want to hone their skills a little bit. But I thought it was a cool web part that kind of came out of that class, and I just wanted to show that to you guys really quickly because it uses a lot of the stuff that's a part of the whole SharePoint development, SharePoint Framework development community. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity to just kind of go through that, and you guys can see an example of something somebody's done. And also, I'll provide the source code for this at the end too, so you guys can take a look at that. So first of all, I have here in the terminal, I have my local workbench running, and if I switch back to the browser here, I'll show you this web part that we actually have up and running. We call it dash for dashboard, short for dashboard. So you add the dash web part, and you'll see right away you get the SPFx controls React package. It has the web part title control, which I'll show you guys in just a second. It also has this placeholder control. And all of these PnP controls that the PnP community and everybody, probably a lot of people on the call have created are awesome. So I highly recommend this, and also just want to say thank you to you guys for putting these out there because it just makes it so much easier to do this stuff. And I didn't have to do any styling on this hardly because it's all styled. It all looks great. So definitely highly recommend a lot of this stuff. But basically the way this web part works is it's all about taking data and then visualizing it. And so we'll just go through a quick example. We'll create a sample web part here, and we'll hit select list, which is going to open the property pane. And basically the way the web part works is you select the list. Now we're in the local workbench. This is going to be mock data that we have here, but so we just have these sample lists, and then you select fields, and it kind of gives control to the user over how they want to visualize their data. So in the live version of this, which I'll show you in a second in the remote workbench, is going to use web services to get this data. So it's going to go out and say, what are all the lists? Okay, now that you've selected a list, what are the fields on that list? And then you can select them, and it basically charts that data and visualizes it. And then you can furthermore use a chart type to actually change the visualization to various chart types you see here. And it's using chart.js, which is I think it's a really good entry sort of visualization thing because it's just so easy to use. So I'll show you guys kind of how that works in a second, but it's actually super easy to implement into the web part. It didn't take much time at all. And basically what this does is going to take list data and it's going to visualize it however you configure it in the web part itself, and then you can kind of get this refresh button to update it at any time. So it's a pretty simple web part, but it's doing a lot of things here that kind of demonstrate a lot of the basic features of SharePoint Framework web parts. We also built a custom color picker control. So this is actually a custom control. Normally the color picker, you would have to kind of hard code like I want these 5 colors, but we wanted to actually have a color array. So you'll see here we get, as we go through the series of data, it goes blue, green, teal, and then it repeats. So if you want to add additional colors, you just click on the plus and you can add as many colors as you want. And this control actually works on a tooltip. So you could pop it out and add a different color. You can change the alpha or whatever, and you can delete colors or whatever. But you can see I can kind of create as many of those colors as I need for my particular visualization to kind of get a full array of options, if you will. But it's all pretty simple, in terms of its execution. Again, this was designed and built for a class, an introductory level class. So we didn't get too in depth, but we did go through the process of building all these controls out. And utilizing a lot of those PnP solutions that are available in the community, which is great. So I'll just show you the same thing really quickly in the remote workbench that I have open here. So we'll go ahead and we'll add that same dash web part here so you can see what it looks like as if we were to use real live SharePoint data. So you can see here I'm going to get the full list of lists in my particular site that I'm on in this workbench. So perhaps I want to pull up the system status list, and then you select the fields. The first field you select becomes the series title, so that's why it's showing these series up here, and then you select any additional fields and they become the data that's plotted on the x-axis down below. And then you'll see you get a little loading screen, and all of the stuff you see here, these are all controls from either the Office UI Fabric or from the PnP controls that are available. So it's all pretty simple in its implementation and really minimal styling that we had to do during the class because it's all just kind of built in to the actual controls that we just dropped into the solution. And you can see here, you can build out some nice visualizations. I had an example of one that we built out using these web parts, using a Death Star example. We want to track, how are we doing with our Death Star? Are we doing a good job? How much does it charge? Let's plot how, whose days we've ruined this month. It's just kind of a silly example to show this. But again, this is all real SharePoint list data. So I could go in and add a new thing for, today and then hit refresh, and it's going to load that data in automatically. ChartJS does some nice tooltips, and you can do things like turn off series of data. Just kind of some neat stuff that's all built in, but you can sort of see the type of dashboards that you could build using this very simple web part. So that being said, again, look at the technology behind the scenes. I'll just kind of do a brief overview. I don't want to take up too much time. Again, I'll give you guys the source code for this, but it's using chart.js. So it's just plugging that data in. It's also using a lot of the SPFx property controls, which are awesome. So those list pickers and the field pickers and stuff are, for the most part, using either a list or a field list picker or a multi-select or whatever. These are all great. If you guys haven't used these yet, I highly recommend it. It just made it so easy to build out some property controls, and I use these all the time. They're really awesome. So kudos to the community for creating these. And also, it uses the SPFx Controls React, which this is a React-based web part. So this worked really well to do things like that placeholder that you guys saw, and also the web part title that you guys saw. I use those all the time. These are really great controls to use. But I actually built this web part before the charts, where I think this is a recent addition to this package. So you'll actually see these are chart.js charts, which is kind of funny that they showed up in this package right after I built that web part. So you guys could also choose to play around with this. I thought this was cool too, that you can sort of do things. I don't know that it connects to lists because it looks like you manually insert the data, but it wouldn't be too difficult to kind of do that. But yeah, so anyway, that's kind of a quick overview. If we look in the code real quick, I'll just show you guys. There is the source code for this, which I'll give you guys a link. It's out on GitHub. And it's basically everything just kind of funneling down to this chart component, chart.tsx, which is, again, this is React-based. And it basically, there is a library that you can import into your React application called React, I think it's called chart.js React 2, or maybe it's the other way around, but it's basically, it's chart.js, but you can literally just drop in a bar chart and then give it data. Like, that's how easy it is to drop in chart.js, which I think it's a great way to start visualizing data using that, because it's just so easy. You can do horizontal bar, and there's all kinds of stuff you can import from that library, and they kind of handle all of the React stuff, and all you have to do is make sure that you have the chart data correct. So basically all this web part does is it handles doing the web services and stuff like that, and then it uses this chart data method, which is basically transposing the data format that you get back from web services into something that chart.js can understand, which is typically going to be an array of labels and data sets. So that's basically all this web part does, is just taking the state data, which is in this.state.items, which you get from the web services, and then for each item, it's kind of building out a data set and et cetera. It does some special things to add the colors and all that stuff, but that's kind of all it is in a sort of a big picture view, is it just transposing that data. Another thing that I thought went really well in this web part was we ended up writing a SharePoint, what we call the SharePoint Service. And this is just basically kind of an abstraction of all the SharePoint web services. One thing I find really tedious is passing the web part context around to all of your React components. That can get really unwieldy real quickly, and the context contains a lot more than you actually need. So we kind of wrote this, you can almost think of it as a static method, but it basically, you have this one-time setup function where it gets the context and the environment type, and then it has methods in it like get and post. But for example, you can just say get lists, and then it says if you're local, return the mock list collection, otherwise return this. And it's just a nice abstraction, because when you actually go to use this, you'll see back in our chart TSX, when we go to our get items method, it's this simple. We just say SharePoint service.get list items, and then we give it a list ID, and then we take those items and we do something with it. And all we're doing in this case is setting the state, and then if we have an error, we're catching the error and setting an error state. in the React component itself. So it just really makes this process, which is usually how you're going to interact with your web services, is you have to make a get and then handle errors and stuff like that. It just kind of abstracts all that to this nice service class. So that might be something that is worth looking at if you guys want to check this out. But again, I'll give you the source code. You can check this out at, we have it out on GitHub. I'll pull up the URL here real quick so that you guys can take a look at that. We have, if you go to github.com/ISPFX, which stands for Introduction to SharePoint Framework. We have several solutions in here that are all open source and available, but one of them is called Dash, as you can see here. And if we open that up, this has all the source code for everything you just saw. And it has instructions for getting started, etc. So definitely check that out if you guys are interested, and happy to take any questions if you guys want to learn more.
Excellent. So thank you, Kyle. So that's a really super powerful web part, and like you noted on the chart control, the chart control was added, I think, on the 2 weeks ago on the SPFx Community Call. We told that it's now available, so it's a super recent add-on on the capability. So. But if there's any questions related on Kyle's demonstration, feel free to use the window for the chats. I think we need to flip now to the Michal Spencer and then do his demos, and let's see if we have some additional time on the Q&A in the end as well. But let's see how it goes. Michal, are you there?
I'm here.
Excellent.
Let me try to share the right screen. Hi, so for those who don't know me, my name is Michal Spencer. I'm a long-time MVP for SharePoint apps, whatever it's called these days, something with Office anyways, right?
Office Dev.
Office Dev. Office Dev. Yes. It's Office Dev and something else. There's an and in there as well. I have to look it up every time.
No, there isn't. It's an Office Dev MVP category, unless you're service servers and services side. So
yeah, but it's called not. Yeah. Yeah, doesn't really matter. And I'm also part of the PnP core team.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to show you is basically a PDF conversion extension I built using SharePoint Framework list extensions. So who doesn't love PDFs? And before we start, I can say, so this is the repo for PuzzlePart, where I work. So I'm the CTO of PuzzlePart. PuzzlePart is a consultant company working with Office 365 and SharePoint, and we do a lot of SharePoint Framework stuff. And right now we have a bunch of solutions which are shared for free here on our PuzzlePart GitHub, but we're in the process of actually moving this over to the PnP repository when I have the time. So the one extension I'm going into this time is the PDF export. So here's the README file, how to install it, etc. So it's a global extension. So this actually started out as a hackathon project at ESPC, not last year, but the year before. Then I ended up creating a solution which used Flow and some Azure functions because the APIs weren't there. But now the APIs are there. So I understand there was a demo with PDF conversion a couple of weeks ago as well. This call, is that true? Which I think used Azure functions.
Yeah, that used Azure functions, yes, indeed. Yes.
Yes.
From Anoop
a
few weeks ago. From Anoop.
Yeah. So let's just test this first. So if I click my document docx file here, you see I get an extension up here. So download as PDF or save as PDF. If I click two files, then it's easier to find. So basically two options, either save as PDF, which will convert each document to PDF in the same library, or download as PDF, which will download as a zip file using zip.js if there is multiple files, or just one file or as a PDF file if you just pick one. So if I click these two files, do save as PDF, processing file number 1, file number 2, and if we go back to the library, we now have a couple of PDFs here as well. So fairly easy stuff. So what's happening behind the scenes is actually I'm using a function called render list as data stream, which is somewhat documented and somewhat not. I know Elio has a post on it. There's some other posts as well. So basically, if you pass in this option here, render list data, enable media TA URLs. I don't know what TA stands for. Maybe something smart. You actually get back a payload for the item with looking like this. Right. So there's a URL with these placeholders in it, and then you also get the actual value you need to replace, which I do down here. So basically, you get a URL you can then call, and then get the PDF for that file, which is converted behind the scenes. So when I click each of the documents over here, I pass in the ID, and then I use camel query to generate this payload for each file. So if we scroll up, let's see if we can find the right call. There's so many calls. This one, look at the response. Always nice to. So here's media service data and the URL. Basically, you can just look at this nice JSON file and you figure out what you actually need. But everything's in this big payload. Yep. So here you see the actual the different placeholders here. Right. And then so that means for each item, I get the PDF URL, and in order to create the PDF item, so what I do, since I want to keep the metadata, you see, so I also keep all the metadata here. So I figured the easiest approach to do this is basically so I take the original URL, rename the extension to .pdf, and then I first copy the file. Basically, so I take, for example, the docx file, just copy it and just call it PDF. Because using the copy to method will keep all the metadata in whatever columns you have, and then I load the blob data for the PDF, and then I just set the PDF data into the file afterwards. So that's sort of a hackish way of, instead of creating a new file and copy every column and caring about how many columns you have, so then you just get the data. It's sort of a nice way of doing that. So that's a smart trick. I figured I'd show some other stuff as well. So you see I have these nice icons up here, and these are actually SVG icons. So if you look at my manifest, so this points to just root export.svg and root save as SVG. So those are the icons. So let's see if we do inspect. And you see this actually now points to the public CDN, whatever this web part is being served from, but you have no idea what the URL is. And if you haven't enabled CDN, then the path would be different. So the thing is, if you just point to root here, and if you modify your gulp file a little bit, so see I have a small task here called copy icons. So it's basically a copy task, which takes all the SVG files and copies them to the temp deploy folder. Because when you build your SharePoint Framework web part, what happens is all the files in temp deploy is actually the files being added into the app package, which is being built. So by adding a task like this and just copy the files you need, you can actually reference files from the root of your wherever the web part is being served from. If it's a global app catalog, a local app catalog, or through the CDN, then the path will actually be correct. So that's also a small trick to get your icons. I mean, it doesn't have to be SVG files, could be PNG. So the other option would be if you could do like a data URL here, but that's not supported for SVGs yet. So this is sort of my workaround for doing that. And then I think I have, I have the puzzle part logo in there, which is also loaded here. And then that's fairly easy to get in if you just do require, and that will be bundled correctly. I think I have my require here. And that makes sure, so this file is actually being bundled the same thing. So instead of doing the gulp task, I could actually, so if I just added statements like this, just let icon 1 and then just use require, that will also move the file into the temp deploy folder. I guess that's what I wanted to show. And I'll paste the URL to the repo. Oh, someone already pasted the repo. Nice.
Yeah, the sample of
it.
Yeah. Excellent stuff as well. Excellent stuff. Really good to see this. Yeah. Any other learnings what you want to share related on this one, just out of curiosity?
No, so I guess this is. So I guess the other option you could actually do to convert the PDF instead of using render data stream is you could use the Graph API, which also has sort of an explicit getting one URL per item, but then I would have to do multiple calls. And you could also call that directly through SharePoint as well, which I know we talked about, but it's not very documented. And I'm planning on doing that as well, but I'm a bit behind on everything. Yeah.
Well, one step at a time.
But as long as stuff is being added into the out-of-the-box API, which is a good thing. So that's just having the PDF conversion built in. So it supports a bunch of different file formats, all these formats up here, which I picked out from the graph documentation, actually. It might fail for some files if you are using encryption or passwords. Then this code should actually give you an error message, and it also checks that the file is there from before, so it doesn't overwrite a PDF file if it's already there. Might not be the nicest looking code. So I actually started out using the dialog I popped up. I started using the dialog sample in SharePoint Framework, but for some reason, if I use the same multiple times, so then it wouldn't pop up the dialog the second time. So I actually had to end up writing my own dialog class instead of using the sample. So might be a bug in the base class for that. I don't know, but I had an issue with it. Something to maybe someone else has a solution for it.
Which hopefully has been reported as an issue, so we'll know about that. So.
Yep. All right.
Cool. I think that's it for this one. So let's flip back on the slides then, and we can continue around the Q&A. So there was a question from Carla or Naveen. Can we select multiple docs and merge them as a PDF? I don't think this solution actually does that.
No, that's not part of the API right now.
Yeah.
No.
So that's not part of. Yeah, that's true. And I think there was a question related on custom PDF templates usage for this one. I don't think that's possible right now either. So I would have to use an Azure function and somehow merge the data in Azure function to make that happen. So. Are the generated PDF thumbnails or are they full fidelity? I think they're full fidelity. That's my understanding. Good. Any other questions for Kyle or Michal or Patrick or me, or any other feedback or discussions? We still have 6 minutes. This is amazing. Will there ever be anything like the new list subscription functionality made for craft subscriptions through the SPFx web port? I'm not following that question, Alan, unfortunately. IE8 support, I don't think we will support IE8 for SharePoint Framework because it's not supported in SharePoint Online. When can we start doing augmented reality VR web parts? No. Okay, so there's quite a lot of questions coming in now. Okay, I need to drop down this. So from Hugo's question, when can we start doing augmented reality VR web parts? No. Now the SharePoint Spaces is using Babylon.js. So technically, SharePoint Spaces, there are the SharePoint web parts, SharePoint Spaces web parts do work in a normal browser as well. So you could already today use Babylon.js based customizations and basically then render Babylon.js 3D components, which could then be integrated relatively easily to the SharePoint spaces. I'm not aware what's the exact timing on the SharePoint spaces right now. I know that there was a few let's say delays caused by personal challenges of certain people, so nothing too major. We'll get back on track on that one. Have you created an issue on the GitHub for the logo design? For the which logo design? Bill, what are you talking? Somebody unmuted, and now I can hear somebody typing. So let's see who. Now it's unmuted again. Okay.
Yeah, I meant mascot.
Okay, so not a logo on a mascot. We could actually have a discussion there. We'll do a small adjustment still on the initial porcupine example, but then coming from the design. Now, to be fair, we're working on the mascot together with SharePoint design team, who's responsible of owning everything, let's say the landing and feeling around SharePoint. So yes, we are more than willing to take feedback. We also need to align the mascot based on the, let's say, design principles, which is interesting that we need to do that, but that's just the way it is. But yeah, whenever we get let's say a slightly more newer version based on the initial feedback on that one, let's have a discussion on the GitHub. So absolutely, that's a good point. So let's see. Oh, I lost the section. Oh, okay. Somebody shared the Babylon.js stuff. Thank you, Vincent. There is a modern events web part out there that actually displays recurrent event like you'd expect. I'm not sure actually how it should work on the recurrent event. If it doesn't, I think that capability should be coming in the future. Now, it's events which are in the Office 365 group calendar. It's not events which are in the SharePoint list and SharePoint calendar list, because SharePoint calendar list is still classic experience. So, and I don't think there's plans to make that modern. To be fair, I'm not sure on that. Alan's referring to Socket.io stuff. Yes, so the Socket.io stuff for the list is in testing right now, so you're able to subscribe on events in the lists, and you will then get events when something is happening. There's the Babylon.js link, 3JS for the win. Okay, Stefan likes that. Porcupine, yes. We should create a PnP Babylon.js web part once we have the mascots. Yes, we should. That's a good point. That is a good point. PnP potato. There we go. Any plans to make task list modern? I'm not sure on the exact plans related on task list. Now, I know that there's an ongoing discussion related on the tasks, because the tasks are also in Planner. So then the question is, do we actually create planner lists rather in the SharePoint site using the new capabilities what we will have, which is basically application integration in SharePoint, rather than modernizing the classic SharePoint task list. And I know that debate is ongoing on the engineering. Well, Pavel is saying you said that there are no plans to make calendar lists modern. This is exactly what happens when people stop listening immediately when I say something. I said there are no plans, or to be precise, I'm not aware of those plans, and that's a completely different statement that there is no plans. Now, I know that there's an ongoing debate on the calendar list as well. And should we have a calendar list modernized now? And probably we should. That's absolutely welcome feedback, and that's something which we should get input on the user voice, so we get the demand defined as well. Now, there is a modern calendar experience for Office 365 group already. So if you have a group associated theme site, you can actually use that calendar, and that's really the reasoning behind of the discussion. It's almost like the task list versus Planner, because Planner is there for managing tasks, and then Exchange is there to manage calendar and email. So do we actually implement then a calendar capability in SharePoint, or do we take advantage of the Exchange group which is associated to SharePoint? But on the other hand, we have also SharePoint sites which are not group associated. So it's a really complex discussion, and somebody needs to make that decision. You crushed my hope of calendar being modern. No, I didn't say yet that it's not coming. I said potentially it's not coming. No, pay attention. Just kidding. I know that I said it first, but then I corrected my statement, and don't quote me wrong on Twitter. Maybe it's too late for that already. That always happens. I need to be super careful on what I actually say. Thumbs down was a typo. Okay. All right, jumping on a craft call. Cool. Excellent. Thank you everybody for joining. We are closing this one. The recording will be available in the YouTube channel within 24 hours with a blog post pinpointing to the jumping links directly to the actual demos and additional resources. But thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for your inputs, and thank you for Kyle and Michal for the demos as well. Thank you everybody. Bye-bye.